Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's Matt, it's Jim, and tonight, Matthew, in Raleigh, they're going to drop the puck on. It seems like it's taken a long time to get here, but the Stanley Cup final, Carolina and Vegas, and it's two really different styles, right? We talked about that in the run up to this playoff. You've got Carolina, who basically has been one of the most dominant teams in the history of the NHL from a playoff run. Okay, they haven't lost a game yet in the playoffs, which is pretty impressive. And then you've got the Golden Knights. That's what we think is going to be pretty good because they've been the hottest team. So tonight, depending upon where you are, if you're in the United States, the puck drops tonight on ABC at 8 o'clock and also ESPN. Sportsnet, if you're in Canada, as well as TVS, which of course is the French speaking, and CBC. So you can see it all over the place tonight. Stanley Cup first round game, Carolina against the Golden Knights. Most people, okay, by the way, I said that they were undefeated. They weren't. Carolina is at 12-1 through 3 rounds. Their only loss came in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals after an 11-day layoff. So since that time, they have been absolutely dominant. No team since the 1976 Montreal Canadiens has gone that far through the first rounds in the best of 7 format. So the Hurricanes make history with it. They can make history with a sweep. It's unlikely that they're going to do that. The 1988 Edmonton Oilers, which was Wayne Gretzky's team, did that back in that day. But that's been a long time ago. And so Carolina's a favorite, but they've been off for a while, and the Hurricanes have been playing the hottest hockey in the NHL. So tonight, 8 o'clock, as we said before, ABC, ESPN, Sportsnet and CBC in Canada. You can watch the game. So there you go. Get ready for puck drop tonight at 8 o'clock on the East Coast. So there you go with that, Matthew. Let's talk a little golf. There's stuff coming up at the used to be the Memorial back in the day.
Still is.
Yeah, I know. That's what they call it. But they used to play over the Memorial Day weekend. So that's how it got. That's how it got the name Memorial. Back when Jack, launched that tournament, about the same time Arnie launched his at Bay Hill. So it's Jack's course, and obviously he will be there, and it'll be an interesting. It's a good course. I've seen it up close and personal. Been around it a couple times. It's a challenging course.
Yeah, it's one of the tougher tests that the PGA Tour presents to players annually in terms of what it will challenge. I think typically you're expecting probably a winning score somewhere around the 9 to 12 under range. And that's more of I think that speaks more to that's going to be a guy having a really good week as opposed to, that's where there's going to be a collection of golfers. But this is now the 50th anniversary of this Memorial Tournament, where it's the 5th year that Workday has been the presenting sponsor of the tournament. This is the last tournament that you're going to see really truly a full and strong field on the PGA Tour. Next week they're going to go to Canada for the RBC Canadian Open. That's the second tournament that RBC sponsors on the tour. The first, obviously, being in Hilton Head. And that's just not one that people are going to want to travel to necessarily. There's going to be most of the top ranked players in the world are going to take next week off instead opting to prepare for Shinnecock in the U.S. Open. And the test that's going to be really. But in terms of what they have this week, it is full strength. You've got Matt Fitzpatrick, Scotty Scheffler, Roy McIlroy. Recent winners: Aaron Rai, Russell Henley, Wyndham Clark will all be there as well. But it's your last signature event prior to the U.S. Open. It's the last true test these guys are going to have going into the U.S. Open. And really, this is going to be, I mean, this tournament of itself is important. And it's important to all of the golfers because they want to win at Jack's Place. I don't think that can be understated. You look at the way that Scotty Scheffler's reacted when he's won there, and you listen to people talk about this tournament. And this tournament is different than most of your other events on the PGA Tour. Definitely different from your signature events on the PGA Tour. Because, I mean, there's Muirfield and this being Jack's Place. It's different. Like, it's just a different golf tournament. It's a different vibe, and it means more. Going back to Charlotte when I was there, Christopher Rayton was the winner there. He put out something on Instagram this morning that said, "Finally get to play it in person instead of a video game." Like, there's almost like a gratitude that goes into being able to play this tournament on this week, and for some players, I think there's probably going to be a little bit of the, you are looking ahead. Like, it's major championship season, and that's where your focus is going to be for some of these top players in the world. But I also take it as a litmus test for world number one, Scotty Scheffler. He's been second so many times, and you didn't see him until the last time you saw him was at the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson. That was down in Texas a couple of weeks ago. And that's not a test of Scotty Scheffler's golfing abilities. Like, I know he didn't win, but he could have gone out and probably shot 25 under in that tournament with his eyes closed, like, every single time. It was not a test of where his game was at. And it's something where he's been so close so many times. There's sometimes just been guys that have popped and had a fantastic week, and that's what it's taken to beat him. But I'm very curious to see what form he's in with this kind of a test ahead of him going into what is going to be a windy Shinnecock, but a Shinnecock that provides him a Grand Slam opportunity nonetheless.
Yeah, one of the things I think is, you've alluded to it. Back when Arnie was alive and was hosting at Bay Hill, it was almost a tribute to come and play at that tournament. And there wasn't a number, we're talking the best and the best would come there. And basically it's now the same thing with Jack at the Memorial. It was that way when they first started it 50 years ago. Bay Hill started about the same time. And, if you were a golfer, you desperately want. Now, Jack actually got to play, in his own tournament and did pretty well at times. Arnie, by that time, had pretty much retired from golf. He played a little bit, but he was more the host than someone who was getting on the course and attempting to win his own tournament. But I think that it speaks volumes to what Jack and Arnie have, did, that those two tournaments, endure. They're still here, and golfers still pay homage to the greatest of all time by having these tournaments. And you've been to Bay Hill, we've been to out there to the Memorial. These are good, solid, challenging golf courses, and and I think that's where you sit down and say, these were designed by golfers. These were not, not to knock Pete Dye or any other fantastic, golf architects, or, over at the Masters with Bobby Jones. You can tell the difference between a golf course that was created by a golfer and one that was created by a golf architect.
Yeah, and really, when you look across the PGA Tour, obviously there's plenty of really good tests, really different styles of courses
Mhm.
across the PGA
Yes.
Tour. But when you look, event by event and the ones that stand out, there's a few that stand out. Obviously, Pebble Beach stands out, but Pebble Beach
Sure.
doesn't play, like the U.S. Open Pebble Beach when they go there for the Pro-Am every year. It's a different
Mhm.
golf course comparatively. But when you think about the tests that stand out on the PGA Tour, Pebble's going to be one of them. The
Yep.
Genesis is going to be one of them, and that's an event hosted by Tiger. And then you go to Bay Hill and the API. That's one of
Mhm.
the toughest tests annually because, man, they brown those greens out, and those things are solid as a rock when they get there, seemingly every
Mhm.
year. Then they go to Sawgrass. That's another one. This is the big test. This is the big test in between the PGA Championship and the U.S. Open. Like
Mhm.
at least with the way that the PGA Tour has their schedule laid out right now, because I get it. Last week at the Charles Schwab, it was a much better test of golf. Lot more challenging for those guys than compared to a week prior at the CJ Cup. But in terms of when you're going to have a full field and you're competing against the full strength of the PGA Tour, this is it. There's going to be some guys that make the trip to Canada. There's probably not going to be many. Um, and this is your litmus test. This one means a little bit more. And to be honest, you're 100% dead on. It does feel like a bit of, they're there almost to honor Jack. It's also a really good point. I think that this is a really good place to see like who is hot and who's going to compete at Shinnecock. Because you think back to last year and what the kind of run that Ben Griffin had been on, and it had been at maybe some courses where you could like question, the field strength, where he was playing, stuff like that. He went out and he competed and went shot for shot with Scotty Scheffler for the first 3 rounds of that golf tournament. And he didn't have I don't, if I remember correctly, he didn't have the strongest finish in the world, but you knew that he was legit. He came out and he had a really good week at Oakmont last year. Um, and so it's guys like that. I'm curious to see if they continue to build their momentum. Ricky Fowler's a guy who's played 54 rounds at this place. It's his 17th appearance. He knows the place very well. He's been a hotter golfer. Haven't really gotten to see a whole lot of him since the PGA. I'm curious to see if his game continues to trend upward as we head into Shinnecock.
Yeah, and I think the key to here is also the fact that yeah, when you go out there and you take a look at that course, you'd mentioned this is the 50th anniversary, right? There are guys who'll talk about when they were there maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And the trees, and that's one of the things I think is kind of interesting, is the different it's a different it's the topography hasn't changed. It's the same course. The trees have gotten bigger. The rough is pretty much the same. It's just one of those things where you go there, and we talked about being a tribute, right? To Jack and Bay Hill being a tribute to Arnie. It's also, you know, it's kind of, you talked about Pebble, you talked about the Genesis, which is played the Riviera. These are golf cathedrals. You know, there's something special about literally just stepping on the ground
Mm-hmm.
and putting the ball down and just hitting it, because how many spectacular players have been there before you
Mm-hmm.
and have played the same course. I mean, it's the same. They haven't changed the damn course. It's the same course for 50 years,
Yeah.
which is why obviously the Masters has been so amazingly um, such a tribute to the golf. But these are golf in cathedrals. There, if you get an opportunity to play them, you want to play them. And if you're a pro, when the pros get geeked out about a golf course, there's something special.
Yeah, and this is a golf course that's hosted the Ryder Cup. It's
Hmm.
hosted the Solheim Cup, and it's hosted the President's Cup. It's the
Hmm.
only course in the United States to host all three.
Right.
Um, so it's there's a clear distinction of what the golfers think about this course and a desire to play here. It also hosts the 92 USAM, which I think is interesting as well. But you're right. It's very well revered, and it is a spot. It's still an opportunity for some guys. Just because you're inside, the PGA Tour's top 75, which is the required. Unless I'm blanking, maybe it's top 70 um, that are required to get into the signature event field. Just because guys are in there, and it's important when you talk about the Aeon Swing 5 as well, because those guys qualify to make it into these signature event fields. It's important because those guys aren't necessarily qualified for these upcoming major championships. It allows opportunities to go get into the Open Championship. I think that the qualifying has been cut off for the U.S. Open at this point, so I'm not sure, at least if it is. If you can, I don't see it listed in the pre-tournament notes. Qualify for the U.S. Open as well on this, but it's a big opportunity. And I'd mentioned Ben Griffin last year and the run that he was on. Another guy that I again, as I was reading through some of these notes, is Siwoo Kim. He's made 15 straight cuts. He's been in the top 10, I believe, 9 times this year. He's a guy that's been hot. You go back to the CJ Cup again. He was a part of that group, Scotty Wyndham and himself, that were really competing for that trophy down there. This is another good test. Like, are you going to continue playing this well? I think he can. I think he's proven that he can, but he needs to do it on a little bit of a bigger stage, I think. And this provides him a really good opportunity to build some confidence going into the U.S. Open and ultimately the Open Championship, in over a month and a half.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. There's no doubt about that. Let's see what we got coming up here on college baseball. Things are getting heated. West Virginia just put a whipping on some Kentucky folks last night, and we're getting St. John's knocked out Florida. There's going to be some new blood in the in the super regionals now.
Yeah, Omaha's going to look a lot different this year than it did last year. You had Auburn taking down Milwaukee. I think it would have taken, like, Milwaukee kind of caught lightning in a bottle to get to that place where they were in the pole position in that regional. Auburn was the better team. They came out and they proved it across the final 2 games, beating Milwaukee twice. USC took care of Texas A&M. Texas A&M was the host. They beat them last night 7-1. I think that proves kind of your strength in the Pac-12 because not Pac-12, in the Big Ten. Excuse me. Because they were one of the teams that was
it's easy to forget.
Yeah, well, when the Big Ten's representatives this year have been Oregon, USC, and UCLA, it feels like it's the Pac-12 all over again.
Right. And it should be.
Yeah. But you look at that, and that's just really impressive. They're a really good baseball team. Their pitching has been really good all year. That proved out. They held Texas A&M to 1 run last night. And then Troy. I mean, you got to give Troy all the credit in the world because Florida was in that control position right there. Like Troy had to win 2 in a row to win that regional. And when you look historically at the numbers, they were talking about them last night on the broadcast. Basically, when it comes to Florida, if they host a regional, they're making it to Omaha, historically speaking.
Normally,
not only did they not make a super, but Troy just knocked them out of their own region entirely, which was incredible.
In Gainesville.
In Gainesville. You had the number 2 seed lose their regional by, again, losing 2 games in a row. That's shocking to me that Georgia Tech lost twice in a row to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They did. Again, I'm still not a fan of watching like as much happiness as it brought me because I'm a Georgia guy. As much happiness as it brings me watching Oklahoma walk off Georgia Tech, there's still the baseball guy in me and just the common sense in me that goes, hey, the number 2 overall seed probably shouldn't be getting walked off in their own building,
Yeah.
To lose the regional. Like, that's just my thought process, and there's no, saying that if you flip it around that Georgia Tech's going to go in the bottom of the 10th and score that extra run. I don't know.
Sure.
I just would have liked for the opportunity to have been provided. I mean, they're the number 2 overall seed. Again, that's your 1 and 2 overall seeds
Mm-hmm.
that lost their seasons. Like, their seasons ended in a walk-off in their own building, both of them, UCLA and Georgia Tech, which is weird and feels wild. But now we move on to the super regionals, which give you, I mean, just be quite frank, there's some odd matchups in this thing. Like, Troy's hosting, Cal Poly's hosting. There's just some strange things, and it's more on the left side of the bracket than anything. I mean, hell, Little Rock and Troy are playing in a super regional. I didn't know Little Rock had a baseball team. But
they do now.
They do. Yeah. I know now. That's on me. That's hand up. That is on me right there. But yeah, and then then on that left side of the bracket, you really have the stranger matchups, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Little Rock and Troy and Cal Poly hosting West Virginia, or no, Morgantown. West Virginia is hosting the regional. They have the seating. But so West Virginia hosts that super regional against Cal Poly. That's an interesting one. But then you get USC going to Chapel Hill. That's a super regional. And then the SEC and Ole Miss versus Auburn, where Auburn's hosting a super regional as well. Mm-hmm. That's the left side of the bracket. That's going to make for some interesting drama. Definitely some different flavors in Omaha, if nothing else.
Yeah. It's funny. My brother, a few years ago, went to Omaha for a business trip, and he came back and he told me, he said, you are not going to believe how geeked out the city of Omaha is for the College World Series. He said, it's just amazing that kind of, and he went out there for a Berkshire Hathaway thing. Warren Buffett lives in Omaha, and came back and just, it's not like he gets to Omaha very often, or for that matter, Nebraska very often. But he said, man, these people just live and die with that College World Series. They love it. The tickets are hard to get. It's just something going on. It's kind of, you're talking about USC, and in a way, for me, watching that game last night, I have no love for Texas A&M, although I should. I have family that graduated from there, but just seeing USC back in the mix was good. I mean, back in the day, Rod Dado and USC, man, they were usually, you just stamp that ticket every year for the World Series for them, and and so to see them back in town, in the opportunity to do it, and crosstown guys up at Westwood are not going, that kind of, I'm sure, makes SC happy. But yeah, it was. We're going to see some fun, different teams here, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to have difference, and little schools like Cal Poly. I mean, that's. You were talking about Troy. I mean, those are not big schools.
Yeah. And look, that one of Troy and Little Rock are going to be in Omaha. Like, they are. So that's going to provide a different flavor. And when you look at the other side of the bracket feels like, it almost feels like a giant compared to looking at the side that we just spoke about, because you have Georgia and Mississippi State. That is one that has been, look, Georgia was 4-0 against Mississippi State in the regular season. Those games were like razor thin. It felt like the margin of these teams is not something that you would expect one of them to be 4-0 over the other, given their regular season series and the postseason game. Which that one is bound to be fireworks, because they have been going back forth at each other on social media. I mean, this is going back to their game in Hoover for the SEC tournament. The fact that they get to do that again, that's got a lot more juice.
Who is that again? I'm sorry.
Georgia and Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Yeah, battle of the dogs. And then you go down to Lawrence, and you've got a renewal of an old Big 12 rivalry with Oklahoma playing Kansas in that super regional now.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go down and you've got two schools with some of the really, I mean, let's just call a spade, biggest brands in college football, now known for their NIL, and Oregon's playing Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then St. John's in Alabama feels like something that should be happening in the second round of the NCAA tournament, not the second round of the, baseball tournament here.
Right. It should be in the basketball tournament. Rick Pitino's not coaching the baseball team. It's, I mean, again, I like the Georgia Mississippi State thing because they don't like each other and never have, never will. And you go to Starkville or you go to Athens, and it's tough to play in those venues. Whenever Mississippi State goes to Athens, it's going to be hell to pay. Whenever Georgia goes over to play in Starkville, there's hell to pay. So that's a rivalry that in some ways you would hope that those two teams would be in the at the College World Series because of their history with each other, and it's kind of sad that one of them is not going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, and I think there was some disappointment in Georgia Tech losing that series, losing their regional, because I think a lot of people wanted to see them make it to Omaha, because the hope would have been that Georgia made it as well, because they were on the same side of the bracket. So you would have had those two playing in Omaha, which just gives when you get a rivalry, or if you had gotten a rivalry of that magnitude in Omaha, just different juice. There's different juice for this Mississippi State and Georgia one too. This one's, it almost feels like Georgia is kind of encroached. Like Mississippi State has had baseball. This has been their thing. This has been their calling card. Georgia's had the success in football. And I think to a certain extent, Mississippi State probably feels like it's almost like it's unfair, I guess, in a way, for there to be success in football and baseball the way that Georgia's had it. They've had baseball. This has been their thing. Now Georgia's come in and encroached upon it. Now they got to go to their house and win 3, which is something that Georgia did to Mississippi State earlier this year when they went and swept them at, Dude Nobley or something like that field.
Yeah.
Down there in Starkville. Yeah,
I've been down there way too many times. It's funny. The way that they have that set up out in the left field, is where the campers can go. So you have a lot of people sitting out there in lawn chairs or sitting on top of their campers and watching the game. So it's a very intimate, setting. It's hell if you're the left fielder, because you got those fans right above your head screaming and yelling at you. But other than that, you're good. It's different. It's Starkville. If you've ever been there, it's Mississippi State or nothing. I mean, that's that. They live and die for Mississippi State, and it doesn't matter what it is that they're playing. I mean, they could be playing softball, baseball, whatever, and they support it. It's kind of like Morgantown. Morgantown is, with West Virginia, the state of West Virginia. Morgantown is their, the University of West Virginia is, as big as a pro team in the state of West Virginia. And certainly, it's ground zero for Morgantown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard the example used, primarily for Alabama. People will say, there are a lot of Alabama fans that love Alabama football, but they don't love Alabama. people in Starkville around Mississippi State, they love Mississippi State. It's
Oh
not
my.
it's not just one sport, one like one coach, one anything. It's the university, it's a community as a whole. And there are some schools where you can't necessarily say the same thing about, but Mississippi State is not one of them.
No, it's funny. I remember being there to do a football game one time, and it was the first time they had a nationally televised game out of Starkville. And we had arranged for a car to pick us up from the stadium, and it had not come. So we called the athletic department and said, it's around 7. This was like 7 o'clock on a Friday night. And we said, could you please, let us know when the car's coming? And they said, well, we'll get you somebody over there. 5 minutes later, a police car pulls up, and we're like, uh-oh, what did we do? And the guy goes, you guys doing that game tomorrow, right? And we said, yes, sir. And they said, come on, get in the car. We'll drive you to the hotel. Never been driven to a hotel in a police car. But there was so many people who were so excited about that. And that's the beauty of it too. And Matt, you've seen this around Georgia, I'm sure. People who didn't attend Georgia, okay? People maybe they didn't even go to college. That is their team. The Bulldogs are their team. It's that way in Starkville. And Starkville is this very small town. It's smaller than Athens. So, it's a good thing. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. And one way or another, we know the Bulldogs are going to win.
Yeah. There's going to be a Bulldog that makes it to Omaha. It's just a matter of which one, Bully or Ugga.
Right. And the colors, whichever that may be. Let's go over to Major League Baseball. Wacky night last night. Some pretty crazy things happened. You had the Rays and the Tigers. The Tigers hit 5 home runs, and that game ended up 10-9. And the Rays in the 8th inning had runners on second and third with 1 out and couldn't get one of them home. Padres Phillies, good series there. Orioles Red Sox, Marlins Nationals. So tonight it's 6:40. Tigers Rays. Flaherty pitching for Detroit. Matz for Tampa Bay. 6:40 also Padres in Philly at the bank. Velasquez pitching for San Diego. Aaron Nola for Philadelphia. Baltimore is in Boston to take on your team. Baz is pitching for Baltimore. Early is pitching for Boston. Nationals, Marlins, that's Batcher for Miami. And Miles Mikolas. How about him? He's been around forever, pitching for the Nationals. The Guardians are in the Bronx to take on the Yankees. Cantanello is pitching for Cleveland. The Yankees got Schlittler. Royals and Reds. Cameron is pitching for Kansas City, and Abbott for Cincinnati. Gosman is on the hill as the Blue Jays take to Atlanta for an interesting series against Elder. White Sox, surprising White Sox, I should say. And the Twins, that game is Martin for the White Sox. And Minnesota's got Phillip on the hill. Giants and the Brewers, that game is in Milwaukee. And that's a 7:40 start. McDonald for San Francisco. Milwaukee counters with Harrison, who's 6-1, by the way, with a 1.57 ERA. Not bad. Rangers and Cardinals. Evaldi for Texas. May for St. Louis. Athletics and the Cubs. Jump for the Athletics. The Cubs have talent. Pirates and Astros. Chandler for Pittsburgh. And Burrows for Houston. Rockies are in Anaheim, the Big A, to play the Angels. Seguro pitching for Colorado. The Angels have Rodriguez. Dodgers Diamondbacks. That's Lauer for the Dodgers. Soroka for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Mets and Mariners. Mets still haven't decided who they're going to start pitching tonight. Gilbert will be pitching for Seattle. So there's your situations for what's going on in Major League Baseball. Let's pop over and get some quick standings and let you know where things sit at this point in time. In the East of the American League, the Rays have a 1-game lead over the Yankees. Toronto is 8.5 games back. Baltimore is 9.5 games back, and the Red Sox are 11.5 games back, but only 3 games out of the wild card at this point. Which I got to tell you something about the American League. Okay, Cleveland is up over the White Sox by a game and a half. In the Central, there are 6 games back. Is Minnesota. Royals 10.5 back. Tigers fell off the planet. They're 11.5 back. Mariners lead the West by 2.5 over the Rangers, who have a. Seattle's the only team in that division that has a winning record. So that gives you an idea what's going on. 2.5 games clear of the Rangers, 3 games clear of the Athletics, and I'm sure no one cares about where the Astros and the Angels are. They're back there. Braves continue to lead the East in National League with the best record in baseball. Phillies are now, and the Phillies and the Nationals are tied, 9.5 games back, 1.5 games out of the wild card. Miami is at 13 back, and the Mets remain 14 back in the cellar. Brew Crew is on top of the Cardinals by 5.5 games. Pirates are 5.5 back. Cubs are 5.5 back, and Cincinnati 7 back in that part of the country. And then the West is the Dodgers, Padres. Dodgers have opened up a 5-game lead on San Diego, 5.5 on the Diamondbacks, 15 on the Giants, and 15.5 on Colorado. So there you go, boys and girls. That's your Major League Baseball look at where things are going so far. And, I didn't think of it at the beginning of the season, but the White Sox just keep, hanging around.
It's really impressive what they've been able to do. Obviously, a lot of it had to do with Munetaka Murakami. I believe he's currently on like the 15-day IL. I think he had a hamstring.
Yeah, he should be back in a while.
Yeah, but like you look at it, who's going tonight for him? It's Davis Martin. Mm-hmm. Davis Martin is 8-1 and has a 2 flat ERA. Who if I'm taking tickets at the beginning of the year, I'd like to know who the hell had Davis Martin, in like a potentially Cy Young type candidacy here. Because at 8-1 with a 2 flat, that's proven. Like he's done that over a sample size that is large enough to be respectable at this point. Mm-hmm. Never in a million years would anyone have guessed that. Then again, no one probably would have guessed that Munetaka Murakami would be, battling Aaron Judge for the home run title prior to him getting hurt. And because I'll tell you what, there's about 29 other GMs in baseball that would have told you they didn't think that was going to happen. Otherwise, Munetaka Murakami would be on their baseball teams. And yet here we sit. They've made all the right moves. They've pushed the right buttons. Now some of their younger pieces are starting to fall into place a little bit. Chase Maidras, a really good one. Vargas at third, who they got back in. Oh, God, who did they trade? They traded somebody to the Dodgers. Oh, man. I'm just blanking. They sent somebody to L.A. for Vargas. He's played a really good third base for them. They lost Luis Robert or traded him to the Mets. Everybody thought that would be a loss. They didn't even get anything back. Like they got Luis Angel Acuna. He's hitting 156. It's not like they replaced him by any measure. And yet they're still able to win baseball games. It's been really impressive what they've done so far.
Yeah, it's been pretty if you look at it, it's there's a lot to like there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
lot to like there,
Yeah.
and it's going to be fun to see how we're getting closer and closer to the All-Star break, and I think this is a part of the season when people start to begin the process of knowing who's for real and knowing who isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the trade market's going to start heating up. Like the Tigers in specific are going to be the team that you're looking at, mainly because they have Tarek Skubal, and where they are at right now, they cannot afford to hold on to Tarek Skubal.
Hmm.
You know, barring some unprecedented turnaround, like that's not somebody that you can hold on to at the deadline and be able to, sit back at season's end and feel good about yourself. That's not something that's happened. Like they're going tonight. Jack Flaherty's going. He's got a
Hmm.
5 something ERA. He's 0-7. Has not won a start yet. That's insane from a veteran guy like that who has been honestly. You look through his first couple of innings, he's been all right in terms of throwing strikes, striking guys out.
Right.
But man, after that, like second or third, really once they get to that second time around in the order, they've
Yeah.
figured him out and they know how to hit him. And I mean, again, that's proven out throughout a sample size, which has been disappointing. I think it's interesting you mentioned Kyle Harrison and his ERA and his record and what he's doing
Hmm.
for the Brewers. That's a guy that they acquired for Caleb Durbin. Like
Hmm.
that's when the Red Sox. It wasn't exact because they sent over David Hamilton as well, who has 10
Right.
bunt hits, by the way, for some reason this season. His previous high was 2. Um, that was the trade package for Caleb Durbin that Boston sent over. Talk about winning that one. Talk about their pitching lab overall, and you look at the guys up and down that rotation and their ERAs.
Hmm.
Them very similar to the Rays. The pitching lab that's in
Hmm.
Milwaukee is second to none in Major League
Hmm.
Baseball. I don't think there's any doubting that. I a couple other storylines that you just look at, like the Phillies. They're 30-29 right now. They're a game over 500, which doesn't seem like that big of a notion given who you thought the Phillies would be this year. But they were in the same position that the Mets were in like a month ago. They
Hmm.
were they were right there. Both were the exact same story, but the Mets were a little worse, so the Phillies kind of flew under the radar. But the Phillies made the move. They fired their manager. They fired Rob Thompson,
Right.
and it's paid off. They figured it out. They've turned it around. They've started to hit again, and their pitching's come along just as well because Christopher Sanchez is right there at the top of the NL Cy Young as well.
Well, talking about that situation about Terrace Scoobel, right? The Nationals made some trades to the Dodgers to with Max Scherzer and Trey. Um,
Turner.
thank you, Trey
Mhm.
Turner, shortstop now with the Phillies.
Yep.
And then, of course, the big trade came when they went to San Diego and sent, you know, the $700 million man out to San Diego, in Soto.
Hmm.
But what you're seeing now is a team that's tied with Philadelphia, one game over 500 in second place.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very young team, and they've got more young players in the minors, and they've got a couple of seasoned guys on the franchise there. But for the most part, these are the young kids, and all of those kids came over on trades for guys that they knew they weren't going to be able to sign back.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk
So I think
about
that holds that puts your position on Terrence School, right there.
yeah, like in specific, you talked about the $700 million man in Juan Soto, who's
Hmm.
now in Queens. Like you
Right.
look at it, they sent him away. Their two best players and two of the
Hmm.
best hitters in Major League Baseball this year, James Wood and CJ Abrams.
Hmm.
Those were the two key pieces of that trade. Mackenzie Gore was
Right.
another one. They sent
Hmm.
him to Texas and got a good return in the offseason out of him.
Hmm.
Those guys are the reason they are where they are. What does San
Hmm.
Diego really have to show for that trade of Juan Soto to New York? Like they got 2 years out of him. They didn't really do much in the playoffs, and then shipped them off to New York. Like, when you're looking in the grand scheme of things, Washington has been able to sit back and just go, thank God, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you figure the amount of money, it's funny, the amount of money that they offered Bryce when Bryce finally signed was a difference of $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was for Bryce is that at that point in time, um, the ownership had said to Scott Boras, the you know we offered this to they offered it to him on the last week of the season
Mm-hmm.
before before the season ended, and they turned it down and they said they were going out on the open market. They came back at Thanksgiving and to the owners, and the ownership said, "Look, we told you the deal's the deal. The deal will be the deal till Christmas, and after that, you know, it'll be what it'll be."
Mm-hmm.
So, they came back in January and said, "Okay, well, where that is the deal still on the table?" And the Nationals goes, "No, we went out and signed some guys. We can't sit here and wait to decide whether or not, we're going to not make the playoffs because you guys, can't get it right." They
Mm-hmm.
signed Patrick Corbin, and they got a few bench players that were helpful to them. Then the following season, they won the World Series.
Mm-hmm. Pieces to a
Um,
championship run.
yeah, exactly. And so basically, what they did is they said, "All right, what do we need? Can we survive without Bryce?" And the answer to that question is yes. And so, again, sometimes you price yourself into a position where you look at Manny Machado.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody and their grandmother thought, "Well, man, he's going to be how many World Series, is he going to be involved with? None
Yeah.
at this point."
He's
Uh,
he's been in one,
yeah.
and the one he was in, the lasting image of it is him
Mhm.
on a knee striking out to be the final out of that World Series.
Right. Not
So
not your not your flashback that you want to see.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think the fun part of this has been, um, the trades, the teams that make the trades of the superstars, and everybody freaks out in the fan base, like, "My God, how can you trade this person?" And going. I'm interested in seeing if things continue to play out as the way they are. I have friends who are in Pittsburgh, and they're talking about they actually might be a buyer in this upcoming round,
Mhm.
which is not the normal in Pittsburgh. It used to be, but it not now. And I think they want to show the fans who have been abused by the ownership for years that they do care. And
Mhm.
whether it's lying or not, we don't know. But we'll see. We'll see if the Pirates make that trade. We'll see if Cincinnati, goes in there. St. Louis. I mean, that whole Central Division. Anybody in that division's got to be a buyer at this point.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to be tough for a lot of teams this year because right now what you're looking at is realistically like the entire American League is going to be buying with the exception of like 3 teams at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get a much more there's going to be a lot more buyers than there are sellers. There's going to be a lot of teams that are trying to toe the line of buying and selling, which is always just insanely difficult and honestly hard to peg down in terms of, you know, figuring out trade partners. Um, and so it's not going to be a great buyer's market, but it is a plus that they're looking at buying at all for a team that really hasn't seemed to care much about putting a winning product on the baseball field for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be fun to see how it plays out, and we'll be here to see it. So, all right, boys and girls, one last any final words before we get out of here today on a sunny Tuesday?
I regret to say that the Red Sox went on the road. They beat the first place team in the AL Central, the Cleveland Guardians, in a series. And I'm dumb enough that they're going back home, a team with the worst home record in Major League Baseball. They're 9-19 at Fenway Park, but I believe again. So I can't wait to put on my stupid hat tomorrow after they inevitably lose this game. But I've bought back in. It literally takes one series. They win 2 games, and I'm like, yep, I'm back in. The offense is here. Like we're good. We're gonna figure
Look, it's hard not to be a fan and to turn away from your team. Just it's tough. I've been there many times, and you do what you can. All right, Gay. Have a great day. Give a little karma out there for the Red Sox, huh? Let's let Matt be happy for a couple of days, okay? All right, everybody. See you tomorrow.